One of the most popular videos on my channel is where we use StoryBlok as a content management system for our Flutter Flow application. We created a really quick sample here where we was actually pulling in content from StoryBlok and just showing some articles on the screen. We're now going to level up that application. So of course, if you haven't watched part 1, please do click on the link, go and watch part 2. It will get you to this point. We are now going to customize our application. We're going to make some cosmetic enhancements. We're also going to allow the user to actually click on an article, show further details of that article from StoryBlok. We're also going to introduce some custom functions. So we're going to use ChatGPT to generate those for us. We don't want to write any code. Let's use AI to generate that code for us. We're going to drop those in. We're also going to use a component as well. So of course, if you're new to Flutter Flow and you're just finding your feet and you haven't used components before, we're going to introduce a quick component into our application. So we've got a little bit of reuse going on between the kind of the list screen and the detail screen. So without further ado, let's have a look at the application and let's see what we're going to create. So here is a final preview of the application. Now that we've done its cosmetic work, we've extended it. We can see here that we've actually now got a category, which is actually presented by a component. Okay, so we can reuse this in our detail screen in a second, which I'll show you. We've also got the time that the actual article is publishing, see 18 minutes, 3 hours, etc. We can then drill into the actual article itself onto another page, and we can see that we've actually got the reuse of the component there that we've got inside the UI. And as you can see here, we just got a very simplified view of the content that's coming back from StoryBlok. So it's a great start, and of course you can take the techniques that you learn in this particular video and apply them to your own application. So without further ado, let's now start focusing on building out the application logic, and of course we'll come back and then we'll style it up and make it look a little bit more like this. So let's get cracking. So the first thing I'm going to do in the application is I'm just going to increase the height of our image. It's currently set at 100. I don't actually like that, so let's put it at 200 to make it look a little bit more interesting. And then in here we've got our content title, content headline. We now need to introduce the category, and we also need to introduce the time that the actual article was published. So on the left hand side, within inside the widget tree, let's just simply right click on this row here and let's just duplicate, and then do the same thing again, right click and duplicate. So we've got 2 additional rows. So let's start with now this particular row here. So let's just simply make a change here. We're going to just quickly change this to the actual category. So if you remember, within inside the actual the actual story that actually comes back in the list. So if we actually look at the actual story object itself, you can see here that what we're doing is, and this of course this is the StoryBlok documentation, so please do go and have a look at that. You can see here that our content is kind of loaded. You've got the top level story here, we've got the kind of the published date, and then we've got the content and component. Now within inside our StoryBlok application, we actually created a category field, right? So that field itself will actually appear within inside the content section. So we know that it's story.content.category. So we now need to reference that within inside our application. So let's just go back here, and quite simply we're just going to go up here and we're just going to make a change. So within inside here, let's just change this to content.category and hit confirm. And then down here we've now got the actual published date. So if we actually look back up into our documentation, you can see here that actually the published date, which is just here, does not appear within inside the content section. So we're just going to reference it outside of that. So let's just go back to our application. Let's just go back here. Let's just make a slight little change. Now we know it's not in content, but we know that it's just we know it's called published, and I think it was just called at there. Just hit confirm. And that's kind of all that we need to do. So let's have a quick check to see if we get those details coming out in test mode. So there we go. In test mode, you can see here now we've got the actual category name that's now coming out. We've also got this, what to some of you guys who's not familiar with ISO dates, but we've got this kind of rather kind of uninteresting date that's coming back from StoryBlok, but we'll sort that out in a moment. But let's focus on the actual technology category. So the first thing I want to do is I want to convert that to uppercase. I just want that to be in full caps and aligned to the right hand side. So let's just go back to the widget tree. Let's just press on the category option here, and just down here on the text align, I'm just going to hit that to the right. And just for good measure, I'm also going to do that on the published date as well. Just select that and move that over. So within the content category, let's now create a custom function which will convert the category name to full uppercase. So let's hit the custom functions option on the left hand side here. Let's go to add some custom code and let's hit function. And at the top here, we're just going to give this a function name. So we're going to say convert to uppercase. And with inside our OpenAI codex, in fact, just before we do that, let's actually add the argument. So we're going to need to pass in a value into this custom function. We want the custom function to do its magic. We want it to convert it to uppercase. And then, of course, it's going to return it back to our UI. So what we need to do is just hit the add argument option here. And we're just going to call this input string. We're going to keep it as a string and nullable. That's absolutely fine. And then with inside our OpenAI codex, let's see if we can get this to generate this function for us. So I'm going to type in convert string to uppercase and return a value if not null. There we go. Let's just hit this option here. Let's let the AI do its magic and hopefully generate some code for us. We don't want to write any code, do we? Let's get this to do this for us. So we've got here, so we've got convert to uppercase function. In fact, I just need to change the name there. I've just made a little bit of a mistake. So let's create that now. Let's just change the function to convert. We're just going to get that to regenerate for us. Just hit that again. There we go, convert to uppercase. So we're going to pass in an input string. If the input string is not null, so if we're passing a non-null value, it's going to do it's going to return the string to an uppercase. Anything else is just going to return null back. So I think that's absolutely fine. That's all that we need to do. So let's hit the copy function option. Say yes. And you'll see here that it now forms part of our function code. We've got it in this little section here. We're just letting the application just to do the analyzer. It's all good. The key thing here, of course, is you do hit the save function option. If you don't hit that, you're going to end up losing your function. Just hit save function, and we just need to check for errors. Let that just do its thing. And we should get no errors back, which we do. And then let's move back into the widget tree here on the left hand side, and this is where we can now make the change in our application to use that function. So just choose the category here, just make sure your text is selected. Then up here, we're just going to select this. We're just going to click the little pen here because we need to make a slight change. We're just going to scroll down here to the custom functions option. You can see now that we got this convert to uppercase, so let's select that. And then our string that we need to pass in, of course, will be our $.content.category. So let's just select that. It's the article item, of course. So of course, in our list view, every single one is an article item. That's no different to what we had before. So choose that. We're just going to choose JSON path. And in the JSON path, we are simply just going to type in content.category. So that is no different to what we had before, but we're passing that actually now into our custom function. So you can see that's how we want it. Hit confirm. In fact, let's just put a little space in here actually, because we need to pass in a default value. So just choose that. That'll do for now. So if we now actually fire this up in test mode, we should see our article, our category name actually in uppercase. Let's hit the instant reload. There it is. We've got it. We've got our category name as technology. That's perfect. So next up, let's convert this into a reusable component. Now we're going to want to show the category on our sub page. Of course, when we actually hit the actual article, we show the detail, we're going to want to reuse it. So let's now introduce the power of components now. So of course, a component is great because if we can just write it in one place, we can make a change to it in one place. And of course, if we use that on many pages, we've only got to make a change in one place. It's going to be a common element. So you need to think like that when you're building your applications. If you find there's some reuse there and you know you're going to use something again, then components is going to be your friend. So on this occasion, we're going to create a component for this particular field here. So just on the on the left hand side here, with inside the actual widget tree, let's just right click on here, the text, and let's actually say convert to component. So just choose convert to component. And we're going to give it a component name. So we're just going to call this category, and hit create component, and you're going to end up in this particular view here. Now, of course, with a component, we are going to be passing in the string actually into this component. So we're going to have to define a parameter for our component. So the way that we do that is up the top here, we've got component parameters. So if we just choose the little plus here, we're going to define the parameters. So we're going to pass in, and I think we're just going to call this category. So we're going to pass in a category. It's going to be of type string, and we're just going to hit confirm. That's kind of all that we need to do here. And what we now need to do is we now need to make a change to this text field here. And so at the moment, this is just converting to uppercase. And of course, we set this up in a particular way that it was trying to use the JSON path. Now we're not going to be using the JSON path here. We just want to actually change the text that's going to arrive here to be the actual component parameter that we've just created. So if you just select that, and we can go here and say component parameters and just say category. That's all that we need to do. Hit confirm. That's it. So so what we're going to do is now we're going to go back to our page, and we're actually going to then select the JSON path to actually pass into the component. Okay, so let's just go back to the home page here, and we're just going to say convert. We're going to go down to the category, which is here, and then just down in this particular section here, we need to click the little option here. So the category is going to be the article item. It's going to be the JSON path, and if you remember, it was called content.category, I believe. So if we just hit confirm, that's all that we need to do. So if we just now go back to test mode, let's reload our application up, and hopefully we should see the same as we had before. There we go, exactly as we expect. We've got technology, and we've got our component up and running. So we'll come back to our component very, very shortly. We'll do a little bit of style into it just to make it look a little bit different. We're now going to focus our attention on this date, and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting, because this is where we're now going to use ChatGPT to actually handle this date, and we're going to progressively build it up and kind of make it work the way that we want it to work. So let's do that now. So here I am in ChatGPT. If you haven't created an account for ChatGPT, please do see the link in the description. Get yourself set up, and you'll get yourself into this particular screen. So we're going to use the power of AI now to write some code for us, so we don't have to do the heavy work. So if you go back to the documentation, we're now going to handle the publish date now. If you look at the publish date within inside the actual story object, so you just need to move down into the documentation, go down to where it says the story object, and this is the section that you're looking for. It's just down by stories. It says the story object. So we know that the actual story object itself is going to be returning back these values. If you look at this particular date here, if you're not really into coding, it's not your thing, you're going to kind of look at this date and you can kind of think, well, yeah, okay, it makes kind of sense here. We've got like a year, and we've got the month, and we've got the day, and then we've got you know, some values in here too, and then night, it's got the time, and it's got the Z on there. So most people who don't really do coding, they kind of look at it and think, they'll be scratching their head thinking, what does all that mean? What we're going to do is we're going to work out what that means, because we're going to actually use ChatGPT to tell us, and then we're going to take that actually into ChatGPT and get it to actually write a function that's going to handle this specific date. So let's go back to ChatGPT, and the first thing I'm going to do is, in fact, I've just literally copied this to the clipboard. So just choose this yourself. Let's just take a copy of this. Let's now move into our chat window, and we're gonna ask ChatGPT the question: what type of date format is this? Then just paste that date in there. So there we go. So it's an ISO 8601 standard format date. Okay, so now we know what that is. We now need to set up our function by specifically saying that it's actually that type of format that we're passing in. So let's create that function now. So I've pasted in there the actual question to save you the spare of actually watching me actually type it. But I'm going to create a Flutter function which takes in an ISO 8601 formatted date string, and it converts it to timeago. So timeago is a very popular term on the web of actually kind of being more descriptive about when something was actually published, or when or a particular date when it was set. So let's hit enter. So here we go then. So OpenAI has now created that code for us here, and we can see here that we've actually got this function. So what we're going to do now is we're going to actually take the contents of this function, and we're going to move that into Flutterflow. So what we're going to do, we're going to recreate this line here and this area here. Actually, we're going to actually recreate that with inside Flutterflow. We just want to copy and paste this particular section here. So just copy this here, just do a control, sort of an Apple C or a Control C, depending on what kind of computer you're actually using. So let's move over to Flutterflow itself. Let's go into custom functions, and we're going to create this new custom function. Just hit the add, go to function, and then within inside this section here, we're just going to do a Control V. What we're going to need to do is we need to change the function name, of course. If we go back to ChatGPT, the function was called format time ago, and we're also going to need to pass in ISO dates. We're going to change these as well. So just do format time ago, just copy that, go back in here, and up here we want to change the function name. So we just say format time ago. There we go, it's the same. And we now just need to add an argument in here, and this is going to be ISO date, which matches what ChatGPT produced for us. That is all I think we need to. It's not going to be nullable, of course, because we're always going to pass in a date here as well. And I think that's all that we need to do. Let's just make sure we've got no errors there. That's good. So passing ISO date. Yeah, excellent. So let's now quickly test this function out. Let's just see how this actually works for us. So go to test function. Let's go back to the, let's say, for example, the StoryBlok API. Let's just grab one of these dates. So let's just copy this. Do Apple C or Control C. Let's go back here. Let's just paste in here. Let's hit run, and let's see what result that we actually get back. There we go, 5 years that's representing. So if I just do here and say 2023, let's just change this maybe to earlier date, hit run, something a little bit more closer to the present day. There we go, 10 days. So that's looking in good shape for us. Now, what we also need to do though is we need to make sure that we, within inside our application, we actually say 10 days ago. So what we can do, we can go back into ChatGPT now. We can actually make some enhancements to our function to actually put on the term ago just after this. So let's do that now. So back in ChatGPT, I've just, in the same window here, I've just put another line here which says make sure the function puts ago at the end. Let's hit enter and let's see what ChatGPT does for us. Okay, so ChatGPT has done its bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this now. Let's just take what it's generated here. Apple C, Control C, let's go back to our function, let's go back to our function code, and let's just paste it back in this section here. Let's just do a Control V there, or Apple V, and we're just going to check for errors. Okay, let's go back to test function, and let's just pass our dated time in. So let's just take this sample for us again, Control C, go back here, go into here, hit run, and let's see what it produces. And hopefully we'll see a go at the end. 5 years ago, excellent. So if I just make a change here and let's just put 23 in here again, something a little bit more present day, hit run. There you go, 10 days ago. Let's just make a little adjustment here actually. As of the recording, it's the 16th, and let's just hit run. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. That's what we need. That is a perfect function for us. So just go back to the function code, make sure we're happy. That's looking good, and let's just hit save. In fact, just make sure that's done there. I should have just checked for errors. Just make sure we clear this little symbol up there. So that's brilliant. So we just hit save function, and we are good to go. So let's go back into our application. Let's now change this particular section for us. So back up in this particular area here. In fact, it's still coming up with a little error. They're also talking about. Let's just go back in here. Let's just leave it to do its bit. Sometimes you get this little issue in Flutterflow where it kind of does this. That looks like it's okay. Let's just go back here and hopefully that's disappeared. Right, yes. So in the publish app now, let's now change this to use our custom function. So just up here with it selected, just select that. And we're just going to want to hit the little edit option here. We're going to go down to custom functions. We're now going to say format time ago. The value that we're going to pass in, of course, will be our JSON path. So let's just choose the article item. Let's just choose JSON path, and we're going to say published underscore at, because we know that with inside our documentation here, we know that it's published at, so that's good. And then let's just hit confirm. Hit confirm. We've got this default value issue again, so let's sort that out. Let's just put a space in here for now and hit confirm. Now let's go back into test mode and see what it looks like. So here we are in test mode, and you can see now that we've actually got a go that's actually against the hours there. But any eagle-eyed spotters there will probably notice that we have a little problem because we've got now a go. So if it's just been published, you're going to see now a go. That's not particularly a good look. So let's make a change to this now. Let's get that sorted. And we're going to go back to ChatGPT, and we're just going to actually get it to make the change for us. So we want to go back to ChatGPT here, and we're just going to make a slight change here. So we are going to say this. So I'll put do not add a go at the end if hours are less than 3. So let's hit enter. So ChatGPT has generated our replacement function. So let's just copy this now. Let's move back into Flutter. Let's move to the format timeago function. Let's just replace this here. Hit Control V. Let's just check for errors. Make sure that is all good. There we go. Hit save. It's doing the same thing again. I think it's because what's happening is every time I'm hitting save, it's doing a little bit of reformatting here, which means that it thinks it's a difference. So that should be all that we need to do. Let's move back into the application and let's give another whirl. So we go in test mode. As you can see here, we've got 7 minutes, which hasn't got the term ago added to the end, and everything else has. So that looks like our custom function has worked. There's one quick thing I just want to fix actually with inside the custom function. We put that space in earlier on, and the reason why that is the case is because we've got nullable selected. So just take off nullable from our format timeago custom function and hit save. We're always going to pass a value into this particular function. There's never going to be a time when we're not, so we don't need to make it nullable. Just hit save. Hopefully that tick will remain. That's good. And we just need to go back to the widget tree. We just need to go back to this function here, format timeago. Let's move down here. Let's just remove that default value out. We don't actually need it. Hit confirm, and we are good. So next up, let's focus on our APIs. Now we need to do some work with our APIs. The API that we created earlier on, we need to make some changes to that. We're also going to want to introduce a new API, which will actually call back out to StoryBlok and will actually pull the individual story into our application. So let's click on the API option here on the left-hand side, and let's have a look at what we got. So at the moment, we've just got one API, which is just the articles. We need to make some enhancements to this because this doesn't particularly make for good reading, okay, because we kind of did this in a rush earlier on in our previous video where we just wanted to pull in the articles and we're just going to pass in our token and all this kind of stuff actually directly on the query string. The best practice here is to actually create the query parameters here, and which means it keeps this URL particularly clean. So click on query parameters, and the first thing that we're going to add here is a query parameter in. So let's just add in the one that it says here starts with at the top, and it's going to be a specific value, and we're just going to call this a string, and it's going to be articles, which matches kind of what we got up here. Secondly, we're going to want to add in this token as well. So add the query parameter in and call this token, and it's going to be a specific value. This is my specific token. Of course, yours will be different from StoryBlok itself, but we know it's going to be a string and we know it's going to be of that particular value. That means we can now delete this. We don't actually need it at all. So just delete that. We can hit save, and what we can do, we'll quickly just do a quick test this to make sure this is okay. Just hit the test API call, and we should get the same response back that we had before. So again, the application won't change here. That's just all that we need to do. So that's all in good shape. So next up, what we need to do now is we need to create our new API call, which is going to be called article, and that's going to retrieve a specific article from StoryBlok. So let's do that now. Okay, so go back to our documentation from the StoryBlok API. We know that we've got this story object, and we're going to retrieve one story. Okay, so if we just click on that inside the documentation, you'll get an idea of what we can actually use. So we're going to make a call into almost the same API. Okay, and this particular section here is many different ways that you can actually pull in an individual story within inside Flutter. But we're going to kind of do it slightly differently. What we're going to do is we're going to call this particular API, but what we're going to do is we're going to pass in the UUID. So the UUID is something that's part of our list of our stories that we got coming back. You can see here that the UUID, if I could just find it, it's just at the top here. Here it is, UUID. So we're going to pass this into this particular request, and we're going to retrieve the single article that we need. So we need to set something up specifically with inside our API call, because what we need to actually do is we need to actually tell the request that actually we're going to use the UUID to actually pull the article back. So you can see here that the parameters that we can pass in to get the individual article can be the slug here. So we've got the in here the slug is kind of like a path into the actual article. You can just see here it's called my third post. We don't want to use that. We're not going to be using the ID, which is this one here. We're going to use the UUID. You could use the ID if you wanted to, but I'm just going to use the UUID because it just gives you another more kind of almost like a GUID. It's like a real random set of values here to be unique for the article. So we're going to pass in these additional parameters in, and I'll show you how that works. So with inside here, we are going to make another API call. So just hit the little plus here. We're going to call this an API call, and we're just going to call this article because we're going to return back a single article. Go back to the StoryBlok documentation. Let's grab this particular URL here. So let's just copy that here. Let's just move over here, and then let's just do an Apple V or a Control V to actually pass that in there. So that's good. We now need to set up our query parameters. So the query parameters that we need here are these. So we've got find by. Okay, specific value, it's going to be a string, and here we're going to put UUID. So if you look back here at the documentation, you can see that we're passing in find by, and then we're going to say UUID. Okay, so just make sure you've got that set as that, and then add a query. We're going to add another one in. So this will be our token, okay, and that's going to be a specific value. It's going to be a string, and we know what that one's going to be. So just put your token in there, just like what we did with the previous API call. Add a further one in. And this one's called resolve relations. Okay, so we go back to the actual documentation. You'll see what this actually means. So we go back to the StoryBlok API documentation. Now, resolve relations is just down here. And what this is going to allow us to do is it's going to allow us to specify that we actually want to bring in some other values actually within inside the actual response. Now, you don't actually need to do this, but we'll just do it here just so I can demonstrate how you can bring in some additional information actually into the response. So we are going to choose. Going to go to string, and we're just going to do a Control V there. We're going to bring page.author and page.categories as well. So of course, if you do choose to use those within inside your StoryBlok CMS, then you're going to be able to see that output actually within inside the API response. So next up, what we need to now do is we now need to create a variable now. So the variable will actually be the UUID. So we're going to have to pass in the UUID into this API call in order to bring back our single article. So let's choose add variable here, and let's put UUID, and it's going to be a string. It's not going to be a list, and that's it. That's all that we need to do, and add the call. What we now need to do is something a little bit more different to how you may think that you might need to actually call the article. Now, typically in API calls, you might be passing in an ID, and then you would you'd have ID here, and then you would reference an ID, and then it would then build up the URL. In the way that StoryBlok works is you have to do something slightly different. And if you look up here, you can see here, it gives you a little bit of a hint. We need to actually pass in the UUID as part of the actual URL itself, not a query parameter. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just going to put UUID here. So what will happen is when we actually test this, you'll see that the URL will actually be much longer, and it'll actually be the UUID will form part of the actual URL path. So I can demonstrate that now. So press response and test, and we're going to need to pass in a UUID. So let's grab one from our application. So I'm going to move back over to test mode, and I'm going to quickly show you how you do that. I'm just going to reload the application here, and I'm going to press F12. I'm actually using Google Chrome here. You can see here that we got our articles come back. Let's just press F12, and I'm just going to do a little reload here. So just make sure you got network selected up there. Make sure you got fetch XHER selected just here, and then what we're going to do, if I just reload here, we should see the articles come back from the actual response. There we go. So we've got stories, and here's our article. So this is kind of what we're using with inside our application. But if you just drill down here, you'll see that we've actually got our UUID just at the bottom. So let's just grab that. Let's just copy that. Here, just do an Apple C or a Control C. Let's move back into our tester. Let's just go back to the variable and the value. And you can see I've just put this in here, and you can see here that the stories / and then there's our UUID, and then it starts creating our parameters. So if I just hit test API call, you'll see by magic, we'll just get one single response come back. So there's a little bit of trial and error there, guys. Just make sure that you do follow this part of the process quite carefully in terms of setting up your query parameters and just making sure you've got everything set up. But generally, you should just be able to pass that in as a test, and you should get a single story back. So that's it for setting up this particular API. I think we're pretty good. I don't think there's anything more that we need to actually add. We've got our variable set, that's good. So we're all good to go for our detail page. So let's now make a change to our UI. Let's now create a brand new page, and then let's actually invoke this API call by passing our UUID from the actual article list itself. So let's do that now. Okay, so with inside our application, let's now create the article page. Now, I don't want to create this from scratch. Let's actually use a Flutter Flow template because it will speed up the actual design. So let's just choose this option up here. Let's just add the page. So just hit new page, and I'm just going to do a search for, say, detail. Let's see what we find on here. There's got to be something here that's going to be useful for us. Okay. That is just going to look down here, see if we see anything here. I think this particular one is what we need. So let's take this product detail. Let's say use my theme. Let's create this as an article page. So it's not articles, just articles. It's just a single one. Hit create page. And let's just start getting rid of stuff that we don't need. So let's get rid of the basket. Let's just get rid of that. We don't need that. Let's get rid of the price there, and let's get rid of in fact, let's get rid of all of the divider. Let's get rid of, let's get rid of this piece at the bottom here, shipping, these details here. We just don't need any of this. Let's just delete it. There we go. That's pretty good. So we're going to change this now, of course, to use the detail from our StoryBlok request. So firstly, what we're going to do is we're going to focus our attention on actually calling the actual API itself when this actual page loads. So within inside the article, we've got article selected. That's the top level page. So we know that actually when this page loads, the first thing it's going to do is going to make that API call, and then of course it's going to then display the details. Okay, what we need to do is we need to set up a page parameter. So of course we're going to need to pass in the UUID from our list into this page, and of course that's then going to make the API call. So we'll hook all that up in a second. So let's just keep the top level page selected there. Let's go up to page parameters, hit the plus, and we're going to add a parameter in here, and we're just going to call this UUID. And in the type, it's just going to be a string, and that's all that we need to do. Hit confirm. So that's all set up for us. So of course, when we now reference that page from the home page, we'll see that as an available option for us to actually pass in that value from our JSON sort of response. So that's good. Let's now look at creating the API request now we're on this particular page. So again, with the article selected, let's go up to the actions and let's open up the action flow editor. So inside the action flow editor, let's hit the add action option and let's make an API call. So choose API call, and up the top here, let's just choose the article that we're going to be calling. That's the API that we just created. Let's add in a variable. So the variable that we're going to pass in, of course, will be the UUID, and the value of that is going to come from the actual page parameter that we've just selected. So you can see here that it's called UUID, so just simply choose that, and we know that that's going to be passed into our API call that we set up. That is good. Here is the actual result that we've got coming back, and of course this is the happy path that we're going to go down, and once that response comes back. So what we now need to do actually is there's one thing I forgot to do. Actually, we're going to need to create a page state variable to actually hold the response that's come back from that API call. So just hit close quickly. Let's go up to this option here and just select that state management. Let's choose add field, and here we're just going to call this article, and here in the type it's going to be a JSON because that's the response type that we got coming back. You should be quite familiar with that now. It's not a list because it's just a single JSON document that we got coming back. It's not an array. Just hit confirm, and we can now go back into our actions here, open up that here, and we can now set that state variable and set it that the response has come back from this result. So just hit the plus there, hit add action, and here we're going to set the update page state. We're going to say add field, and of course we're going to choose article, and that's all that we need to do here. Actually, just forgot to go into the set fields here. Of course, that's going to be quite important for us to do that. We're going to need to set the value, and of course, we're just going to set the value here. Okay, so just select that, and it's going to be the action outputs, and of course, it's going to be the API result, and the API response will just be a JSON body, and that's it. That's all that we need to do. So yeah, it pretty well much told me there that I forgot to do that, so apologies for that. So that's all done. So we're pretty well much now going to make this call into our API. We're going to get the result come back. We're going to save it into our page state variable, and we can now hook up the widgets within inside our UI onto the response that comes back. So just hit close. So in this particular screen, if you remember the actual story response that we got coming back, so let's just go back over to the documentation. We know at this particular stage we're going to get a story, and then we're going to get content, and then we're going to need a hook on to our individual elements that we got, our values that we've got coming back. So let's do that now. So inside here, this is going to be the title. So with inside the title, let's just choose the text up here. Let's choose the action output. Let's choose the the page state. Let's choose the actual article, and here we're just going to say JSON path, and we know that it's going to be story.content.title. Okay, hit confirm, and if you remember, if we go back to the test mode that we were looking at previously, this is the example that we got coming back. It's probably worth you probably taking a bit of a screen grab of this, and just so keep this sort of handy. But you can see here that we've got our story. This is an individual story that we got coming back. We know that we got our content, and we know that we've actually inside that we've got our title and we've got our content. We've got content.content, and we'll just set that in a second. So that's all that we need to do. If we go back to the application, so here we've got our content here, so of course we just need to do the same thing here. Just go up to there, go to page state, go to article, and then here we're just going to do a JSON path, and we're going to say that it's story.content.content. Okay, hit confirm. Just for good measure here, we're probably going to have to make some changes here, because we're going to get problems here if our titles and our text is going to be too long. It's going to fly off the screen. So what we're going to do, we're just going to choose the product name here, and we're just going to wrap that actually in another widget. So let's just wrap the widget in a row, and we're going to do the same thing here for this text here. We're just going to wrap the widget actually into a row. That's good. And then with inside the product name here, we're just going to expand the text out to the full width. And then in the text here, we're just going to do the same thing as well. We're going to expand that out. So what that allows us to do is that now means we'll see our content come down the screen, and we'll see the title expand as well with inside that particular row. So now we need to focus our attention on the image here. So let's get that organized. So hit the image, let's go down to the path, and then let's go down to the page state, and we want to go to article, and of course that's going to be a JSON path. Now with inside our response we've got coming back here, let's have a look here. Our images, if I get to the right screen, our images is going to be in the content. It's going to be the actual image. If you remember, in our first series, we actually used the thumbnail, but we're going to use the image. So we're going to want to go from story.content.image and then file name. So here we're going to go story.content.image.filename. Okay, so that's just the path into that image itself. Let's just hit confirm. And that's it for now. We'll come back and do the category very, very shortly, because we're going to put our our component to replace that. But what I want to do is I actually just want to hook up these particular buttons here. So I want to choose icon here. We're going to want to select the icon, and of course we're going to want to remove the page. So just go back up to just select the icon, go up here, go to add action, and here we're just going to sort of close that particular option. So just, in fact, we'll go navigate back actually. So just choose navigate back. I think that is acceptable for us to do here. And so that means we can now close that particular screen. But of course, the magic now is going to happen on the home page now, because we're going to need to make sure the home page can actually link through to this particular page. So let's make that change now. Let's move on to the home page. So here we're just going to choose the container, and the container we're going to choose the actions here, and we're just going to want to add an action. And on this particular one we're going to say actually to navigate to, and we're going to want to say the article page, and we're going to want to click this option here to pass. We're going to pass a parameter in, so choose pass, and we're just going to choose the UUID because that's the parameter that we specified with inside the article page. Let's choose UUID, and of course the value of that is going to be again the article item, and we're going to want to say JSON path, of course, and we are going to want to say UUID because it's not within inside the content, it's within the root of the actual the JSON response. So if you look back here again at the documentation, UUID is right at the top level here. So on a particular story, we're at this level, we just want to choose UUID. So just make sure UUID selected, hit confirm, and I think we are good to go. So let's give this a go. We're now likely to see a possible error on our article page, because it's likely that actually we might see a bit of a flash of red there because we're not really handling the loading of the page particularly well. But let's give it a while. It should work out fine for us. So there we go, it's back in test mode now. Let's choose an article here, let's select that. Okay, there's the sea of red that we saw there. We'll sort that in a second. There's many different ways of handling that actually on the page, but we're going to make it really simple for ourselves in this particular example. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to hide the content. We're going to show a kind of just a very, very brief piece of text there to say that it's actually loading. And then we're going to once that's loaded, then show the content. So as you can see here, it's looking really good for us. We can choose any of these, of course, and we can actually select into the article. So it's looking good. It's looking good. Let's go and change that detail page. Let's sort out the visuals and make sure we get that created. So let's move back over to the UI builder. Let's move back over to article, and let's sort that out now. So what we want to do is we want to create some page state now to handle the is loading. So what's going to happen is that when the page first loads, we're going to set some page state called is loading to say, right, we're now loading. Once the page is actually loaded, we're going to send that back to false. So we're going to say it's no longer loading. And what we're going to do is we're going to hide this particular content on when the page is actually loading, and of course then display it when it's actually finished loading. So let's do that now. So let's just go over to make sure you've kind of got the article selected here. Let's choose this option state management, and we're just going to add another field in here called is loading. Okay, and we're going to set this to false to start off with. So it's a Boolean value here, which is going to be false by default. Of course, it's not going to be null. It's not going to be nullable. And let's hit confirm. So we now have our is loading, and what we now need to do is we now need to make a change to our action flow for our loading of our article just here. So let's choose the actions. Let's go into the action flow editor, and what we want to do is we want to add in a new action. So just press add action. Let's just move that up to the top, and with inside here we just want to say update the actual page state. So the very first thing that we're going to do when the page loads is we're just going to set that is loading indicator to say it's true. So just add it, select that there, hit the value, say set value, and then we just want to set it to true. And that's all we need to do there. And of course, we're going to go down this particular happy path. We could put it here, of course, if depending on what we're doing at this end, if we're handling any errors or anything. But this is a really simple example. Let's just add it in here. So we're going to update and add the action there. We're going to update the page state. We are going to add the field. We're going to say is loading, and of course, at this particular stage, we're fully loaded. So we're just going to set the value and it is to be false. So hit close. So that's all set up for us. And of course, what we're now going to do is we're going to make some changes here actually, because this is called product page, this particular column. Let's just let's just make this change to say, article, in fact, article let's just say keep it the same as we've got our article container, so it makes it a little bit more better for us. And then with inside the article container, we've got then this column container which contains the actual dynamic content that we're going to change. What we're going to do is we're actually going to put a conditional visibility on this column container. So up here we're just going to make sure it's selected, and under conditional visibility, let's just select that to be on, and the conditional visibility will be of course will be false. So let's go down to conditions. Let's say it's a single condition, and we're going to say the first value is, and we're going to choose unset, and we are going to say here that the page state, if it's is loading and it's equal to false, then we know that it will be then displayed. Okay, so hit confirm. So that's that done. So of course, when we now go into test mode, what we'll see is that we'll see just a flash of white, and then the actual content will be displayed, but won't really give the user any kind of visual cue to it's actually loading. So let's just choose that. As you can see, there's the flash whites. We've got rid of the red, which is great. That's just what we want to do. But we actually probably now want to show some kind of loading indicator. Now, there's many different ways that you can put loading indicators actually into Flutter Flow. I'm just going to keep it really simple in this example by just putting some text in some row there. But of course, a Lottie animation, anything like that to make it look a little bit more visual and appealing. I encourage you to do that. There's a widget for Lottie animations within inside Flutter Flow. So go and have a look on how to do that. So we're just going to keep it really simple. Let's go back here. And within inside this article container, let's just add in a row here, and then let's just add some text in here. I'm just going to move this up here. There it is. There's the row with the text. What we're going to do is just going to expand that row. In fact, the row is fully expanded out there. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Let's just move the text actually to be fully expanded. There it is. Let's just center the text, and then let's just here as just say we'll just say fetching article ... That's all that we need to do. And then let's put some conditional visibility on this. So this is going to be the reverse of what we've just done here. So go to conditional visibility. Let's say conditions, and say a single condition. The first value is the is loading. So let's go down to the page state, the is loading, and of course we want to show this when it's true. So specific value is true. Hit confirm, and that should all that we need to do. We could actually just put some padding up here. Let's just choose say 20. Let's just do that. Let's pad it from the top a little bit. Let's go to test mode. Let's just go back here. Let's just do an instant reload. So here we go. Just choose that. Fetching article, as you can see, we're seeing that kind of load there. So you can do something similar, as I said, below the animations, make it look a little bit more pleasing, make it more centered down here. But that's pretty well much the effect that we need. So let's just finally sort out this category name now. Let's get that one sorted. Let's go back here. So this again is really straightforward. We can replace this now, this category, and it's called product price here. So we're just going to kind of remove that out. We don't actually need. So what we'll do is we'll right click on here, we'll say wrap with widget, and we're just going to say a row. That's good. And then with inside here, we're just going to drop our component in now. So let's just choose category. So there it is. Let's get rid of the product price. We don't need that. And then with inside our row, let's just put some padding to the left. I think it's about 20. That's looking good. That's all we need to do. In fact, we'll probably just on the bottom, and let's put say 20 in there as well, just to give a bit of spacing. So what we now need to do with our category component, we now just need to configure it up. So of course, if you remember, we've got our category option here. We can just choose that. And so what we've got here is we should just be able to then choose the page state here. We're just going to say the article. We're going to say JSON path. And here we are just going to say story dot content, and it's just category. That is the path to our category. Just hit confirm. Let's do a quick reload in test mode. Let's see what we got. Choose this here. And there it is. And there is our component being reused. So really, really straightforward. Of course, we can come in now. We can make some styling to this. As you saw on the kind of the sample that I showed earlier on, we had some sort of different colors on here. I think everybody pretty well much knows watching this particular video how to kind of do that now. Just for good measure, let's just finish just a little bit of the home screen here. Let's just on the top here. Let's just center the title. Let's get rid of the actual elevation that we've got here. We don't really need that. Just hit 0 on that, and then on the primary color, let's just make some changes there as well. Let's just change that here. Let's just change the value here. So it's just going to be, say, secondary background, and then the actual text itself. Let's just change that to, let's go to primary text. That's good. And then we've got our article. Let's do a quick reload. Let's make sure that looks a little bit more pleasing. So there you have it, guys. That is a wrap for this particular video. I really do hope you have actually enjoyed it and you've actually learned something from it as well. Of course, depending on your skill level of using Flutterflow, of course, but it's certainly been a really good exercise, and it just shows you how you can use these other third-party services that you can bring into your application. StoryBlok is a great asset to use as well. Please do like this video. It really does help the channel out. It gets it pushed out to more people on YouTube who's actually learning Flutterflow. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do as well, because there's going to be so much more coming from myself, and hopefully you'll learn some fresh stuff along the way. So until next time, thanks for joining me, and we'll see you soon.